Ladies and gentlemen, these are my 2024-25 Premier League season predictions. I'm going to make my table right now. I'm going to predict. Forget that. I'm going to tell you. I've seen the future. Nostradamus. I'm telling you where every single team is finishing in this year in the Premier League. And in 12 months or 10 months or whatever, next May, please come back to this video and see everything that I got right. And if I got stuff wrong, feel free to rip me apart. As always, these are just my predictions. I'm probably going to be wrong about a lot of this stuff, but let's get into it, bro. I'm going to start with Liverpool. Liverpool, I'm putting them right here. Liverpool, I have them coming in third, which is where they finished last season. Now, they haven't made a single signing this summer. Obviously, they've been very linked to Zubimendi. There were some early rumblings about Trent perhaps leaving the club, even though it kind of looks like at this point in the season he's going to stay going into the year, 1 year left on his contract. But for the most part, you're looking at Liverpool the same way you did last season in terms of their squad. Now, what's the big difference maker for them? The manager. Obviously, they parted ways with Jurgen Klopp at the end of the season. He's taking a bit of a sabbatical at the moment, and in came the Dutchman from Feyenoord, Arne Slot. Now, I'd be a liar if I was to tell you I've watched every single minute of Arne Slot ball in preseason, and I know exactly how Liverpool want to play, but I have a fairly good idea. Clearly, Liverpool this season will be a lot more oriented and a lot more focused on keeping the ball and being more of a possession-based team. That's not to say they're going to be like Pep City or Arteta's Arsenal, but they're going to be a lot more careful on the ball. If you look at Liverpool last season, their biggest issue was undoubtedly how many times early in games they would fall behind and have to chase games. And a lot of the time, they were able to do that. But all season long, people had this worry in their mind that, was it sustainable? Could you continuously fall behind early in games every single time and always come back? And eventually, towards the end of the season, especially those last 10 games, it came back to bite them in the ass. They weren't able to come back. And I don't want to say the luck finally started drying up, but that inevitability and that never say die mentality, it only got them so far. Like, it got them far into the season, but it wasn't enough to kind of get over the line. Under Arne Slot, again, not to say that they're like Barca under Pep, but they're a team that I think are a lot more focused on being in control both on the ball and off of it, especially in terms of the midfield. Maybe under Klopp in the past few seasons, you were seeing a 4-3-3 with 2 8s and 1 number 6, and both the number 8s were high energy, ball winners, kind of setting the tempo for the game, where the number 6 was kind of like the ultimate shield for the back line. You saw Endo last year, you saw Fabinho in the past. I think with Arne Slot this year, he almost tends to like to build up with 2 deeper midfielders, maybe one of them being more of like a ball-playing midfielder next to more of like a defensive-minded one, and then a number 10 kind of in front of them, which whether it's Harvey Elliott, whether it's Dominic Szoboszlai, we're yet to see. But I think in those deeper positions is really where they're trying to bring in Zubimendi. They have McAllister. Endo, I'm not sure how much he'll really feature in Arne Slot's plans this year. We have Curtis Jones, who's already kind of come out and said that this style of play suits him a lot more. So it's a different Liverpool. It's the same players, it's the same group, but the identity is a little bit different. And I think what's going to be a big theme across most of these teams, right? Like, you're going to hear me say this a lot about United, about Spurs, about Chelsea, about Arsenal. If you've noticed, a lot of these teams haven't made big money signings or made massive changes to their team, period. Whether that's because of PSR, whether it's because of FFP, any of that stuff, right? It's for the most part the same group of players for most of these teams. So what's the difference maker? What's going to make Liverpool take a jump from last year to this year? What's going to make Chelsea make a jump from last year to this year? Spurs, United. It's how tactically the manager is going to be able to elevate them. Tactically, managers this season in the Premier League will have more impetus on them to improve the team than signings have in the last few seasons. In the last few seasons, I almost feel like at times managers were kind of given like this ultimate insurance policy that if it doesn't work out, it's because I need to go buy 5 players. This year, most managers don't have that insurance policy anymore. The team's not working out the way you want to. Please coach them better. Please elevate the level of the team tactically rather than personnel-wise. And in a new manager, you're seeing that more than anybody. So Liverpool, I think, are still a little bit away from City and Arsenal, right? And I'm doing this before the transfer window closes. So we're yet to see what's going to happen, whether they bring Zubimendi in. Maybe there's another guy that comes in as well too. But I'm expecting Zubimendi will probably be the only business they do this window, or at least the main big business that they do this window. Maybe an Anthony Gordon, we'll see. That could also elevate the level of the team. But I am expecting to see Zubimendi and not too much else. But I do rate Arne Slot as a manager. I think his philosophy and the way he wants to play is already very clear, which is very impressive for a new manager. But more so than anything, chat, I'm a firm believer that when you have Alisson, Van Dijk, Trent, and Mo Salah, it's very hard for your team to fail. I think those guys are able to dig you out of holes and dig you out of bad situations so many times just because, let's face it, they're superstars. They have this word that I love using, X factor, in terms of they can change games all by themselves. It doesn't matter about the system. It doesn't matter about their coach. It doesn't matter about their teammates, how their team is playing, how even they're playing. They're capable of producing big moments in big games individually. And I think when you have 4 or 5 of them, right? You're talking about Alisson, probably the best goalkeeper in the world. Trent, one of the best right backs in the world. Van Dijk, one of the best center backs in the world. Salah, one of the best right wingers in the world. You could make the argument all of those guys are the best player in the world, but at minimum, top 3, top 4, right? Having those kinds of players in the spine of your team almost guarantees for me, Liverpool will still be in the top 4. They'll be challenging with the likes of City and Arsenal, but I do think just like last year, it's probably a step too far. I do think those two teams are still a little better than them. So for that reason, I got Liverpool in 3rd. Who else do we got here? Who do I think is going to get relegated first and foremost? When I look at these teams, I have to say, again, I'm very honest when it comes to this. I haven't watched every single Ipswich game of the last few years. I haven't watched Southampton massively under Russell Martin. I haven't watched Leicester under, Steve Cooper. So there are question marks over those guys. And I don't want to just send all 3 promoted teams right back down. Like, I think last season it was just like that, right? All 3 promoted teams went back down. It's one of the worst years for promoted teams ever. I don't think that'll be the case this year. Where else can we kind of go with this? Where are you guys feeling? I do think there's some teams that you can kind of put into higher mid-table. I think Fulham are kind of a banker to be between 7th and 12th. And I also think Crystal Palace are a banker to be between 7th and 12th. I think those 2 are where we'll start with those ones. Now look, Fulham have had a busy window. They've brought, obviously, Painha was the big departure, and I think that's a massive, massive loss. And as far as I'm concerned, Fulham haven't replaced him like for like yet, right? They are still without a Painha replacement. That's a big one because Painha, in terms of being a pure, natural defensive midfielder, was probably the best in the league in terms of like the defensive side of being a DM. On the ball, you have better, right? But in terms of winning the ball back for his team, Painha is the gold standard for defensive midfielders in the Premier League, or at least he was the last 2 years. I think he won the most tackles both the last 2 seasons. It was crazy. And losing him is a big loss for Fulham. And I'm interested, how do they replace him in the summer? Or do they even try to? Do they kind of change the shape for it? However, they are trying to get McTominay. We'll see if that kind of breaks through. McTominay, by the way, is not a like-for-like replacement of Painha. And also, they brought in ESR. ESR, when I talk about players that I'm looking forward to seeing specifically as individuals this season, I've always had my stocks in ESR. Even as an Arsenal fan, I love watching the guy play. I love players that just have no fear and carry the ball forward and want to make things happen. And it's kind of sad the way his Arsenal career has panned out. I always say I think the project that Arsenal had progressed faster than Emile Smith-Rowe did. I think it kind of left him behind, which there's no shame in that, right? There's always going to be casualties. However, I still think there's a really, really good player there. And I think you've seen, well, I said, even as not an Arsenal fan, that's what I meant to say, chat. I still think there's a lot of talent there, right? In terms of a player that can carry the ball and impact levels at that level of the game, right? I think Arsenal is probably too big a step for him. United is probably too big a step of him. Chelsea is too big a step of him. But I think at Fulham, you've seen a guy like Andreas Pereira, who I actually think is a worse player than Smith-Rowe, but struggled really making any kind of impact at United. He came to Fulham and found his level. In fact, he's been one of their best players the last 2 seasons and even found himself back in the Brazilian national team because of his form for Fulham. I think Smith-Rowe can do similar because I think Smith-Rowe is a better player than Pereira. And I think already you look at the level he was at before he kind of fell off. He was breaking into the England team. So I think that's a good signing for Fulham. And I think last year you kind of look at them, right? A lot of people had them going down because Mitrovic had left, but they found solutions. Muniz was like one of the revelations of the second half of the season last year, even won player of the month at one point. They have a good squad. So for that reason, I think I got Fulham finishing mid-table, 7th to 12th, maybe lower mid-table, but for the most part, I think I got them here. The other team is Crystal Palace. So let's not also forget too that Fulham lost Tosin Adarabioyo. Even though I've seen this morning, they're trying to bring Joachim Andersen back to the club, but we'll see about that. But let's stick to Joachim Andersen's current club, Crystal Palace. Now, they've lost a few players. Olise is gone. Well, Olise is the big one, right? We're yet to see still if Eze remains at the club, what happens to Mateta. But the way Crystal Palace finished the season last year, they were the form team in the league for the last 2 months. They beat United. They beat Liverpool. I believe they beat Spurs. They were just ridiculous. Glasner came in and completely changed life for that football club. And he changed life, in particular, for Jean-Philippe Mateta. Oh my God, chap. Before a ball was kicked, I was saying Mateta might be the worst striker in the league. By the end of the season, Mateta was like the form guy in the Premier League. And I think a huge part of that has to do with Glasner coming in and just completely changing the football club. You hardly ever see a guy come in and have that much of an impact. But Palace went from one of the most boring, dreary, predictable teams to play against under Roy Hodgson to all of a sudden everybody's second favorite team when watching Premier League action. They were a joy to watch. They were fast, they were energetic, they were fearless, and you had players all over the pitch causing you damage. Munoz at wingback, terrific player. Terrific player. Guehi and Joachim Andersen. We'll see if Guehi ends up staying, but for the most part, it's them two at the moment. Great center back partnership. In midfield, Adam Wharton, who was signed in January, was a revelation. So good that he even ended up making the England team. And speaking of England team, there wasn't a single team in the England squad that had more representatives from a club than Crystal Palace. And Wharton, Eze, Guehi, and Dean Henderson. Dean Henderson, obviously, in goal. I didn't speak about him, but brilliant keeper. Eze on the left. Obviously, Olise is not there anymore, but then Mateta up front. Palace, if they can kind of prove that last year under Glasner wasn't just like a hot bit of form, and that's really who they are, I think this is a great place for them. 7th and 12th. And I know they often finish here anyways, but they probably finish closer to 12th normally than they do to 7th. I think this is one of the first seasons where we could really see Palace in the higher bit of the mid-table area. So I got them. I actually got them above Fulham. I got them here. I feel like Newcastle hasn't really made any signings, right? I think Newcastle, I got them here. I think I got Newcastle 7th. And it's a shame because I really like Newcastle, but I'm just looking at them from last season to this. Have they made one signing? I know they're trying to bring in Guehi to the club. Obviously, the way Isak kind of played the second half of the season was incredible. Gordon had an amazing season last year. Bruno G and Joe Ellington, they'll have Tonali back for the whole season, which in a way is kind of like a new signing. I am expecting to see Livramento and Hall play a lot more on either side. So, Newcastle should have a good season, but have they done enough to kind of... Look, I think the big thing for them is they're getting a lot of injuries back. Newcastle last year really suffered with injuries. Really suffered from it. Like, I know we focused a lot on United and Chelsea, but when we talk about injuries, I think Newcastle faced just as many as them. Like, it was a crazy unlucky season for them. So they're getting a lot of guys back, and we remember what they did the season prior. They won't have European football just like that season, so they could definitely do a lot better than 7th, but I don't know, chat. Am I being a little harsh putting Newcastle 7th? Maybe we revisit it, because I think for now, I got Newcastle just outside of the top 6. But let's also see how the window kind of closes for them. I think this is a little harsh on them, just because I don't know much about their new manager. And I think losing De Zerbi is a big one. But Brighton have hired a 31-year-old named Fabian Hurzeler. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. If I'm not, I apologize. Fabian Hurzeler. I don't know too much about him. In fact, let me even see his coaching history. He coached St. Pauli last year, which was his first, well, I guess his second season, because he coached them as a caretaker the year before. What did he do at St. Pauli? To be fair, bro, he didn't even coach them in the Bundesliga. He coached them in the second division, got them promoted. But one thing about Brighton, right? They hardly ever get their appointments wrong, whether it's managerially or whether it's signing players in the windows. So just because we don't know a lot about this guy, and just because he doesn't have a huge track record, especially in terms of first division football, doesn't mean that he's a bad appointment and doesn't mean he's a bad manager. But off the basis that they've lost big players in the likes of Pascal Gross in particular, and the fact that their manager is a bit of an unknown quantity, I think there is a danger that Brighton continued to slip. Already last season wasn't great, but they did make some good signings as well too, right? Did they sign Weaver? Am I bugging? They did sign him. That's a big signing. Obviously, he was so crucial to what Arne Slot was doing at Feyenoord. That's good. They'll have Mitoma back for most of the season. They had a lot of injuries as well last year. Evan Ferguson will probably hope to have a better bounce back year than he did last year. Kadioglu, I don't think is confirmed yet. I think they've been linked heavily to him. They did sign Minta as well too. Maybe it's a little harsh. I'm gonna keep them here for now, around 13. I think they'll be a lot closer to 13th than 17th. I don't expect Brighton to get relegated, but for now, I'm gonna have them in this area. We'll see kind of how the season goes though, and we'll see how the rest of the window goes as well too. I think I'm gonna go to Chelsea, chat. Where do I have Chelsea though is the question. And you know, it's really tough with the Premier League these days, right? Because we had the big four, or no, at one point, right? Let me run you through the history of the Premier League. We had the big four at one point. It was United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. And then around the turn of the decade, 2009 onwards, Spurs and City kind of came into the equation. City in terms of that buyout from Sheikh Mansour, Abu Dhabi. Spurs obviously just like building this very, very good team that would just get more and more competitive. And now we're almost looking at it as like a big 8 because Newcastle have been bought out. Villa have established themselves now as a team that can qualify for the Champions League. So I think the first consensus as a fan of the Premier League is always to put Chelsea United in the top 6. But the fact that Villa are now here and making very, very good signings as well too, doesn't make it so obvious that either of those teams are in the big 6, bro. Chelsea have had a tough preseason. They've had a tough preseason, bro. Very, very tough. They haven't looked good whatsoever. The signings that they've made have been a bit peculiar. The only real big one that they made was Pedro Neto. The rest I don't expect to feature heavily in the first team. I think they're still trying to offload some players, which could mean that we see a late addition, whether it's up front, maybe in defense. To be fair, they signed Tosin Adarabioyo as well too, right? So Tosin and Pedro Neto are their two big acquisitions. They sold Gallagher. They're still trying to offload the likes of Lukaku, the likes of, what's his name, Trevor Chalobah, Broja. If they get Osimhen, I think that's such a big move that it gets them to the Champions League. Excuse me, Dewsbury Hall as well too. But for me, Dewsbury Hall is just not a like for like, but that's Gallagher in, Dewsbury Hall out. That's not a massive incoming for me. Neto is really the big game changer. But if they are able to bring an Osimhen to the club, I think that's a signing right there, chat, that propels them into the top 4. If not, I think you're really asking for Cole Palmer to have a huge season like he did last year. But there's no guarantee of that. I expect Cole Palmer's productivity in front of goal to go down a little this year. That's not to say I think he's going to have a failure of a season. Palmer is more than just GA. But I don't expect him to have the most GA in England for a second successive season. If he does, I'll hold my hands up and I'll say congratulations, you proved me wrong. But I think last season might have been an outlier. I still expect him to be Chelsea's probably top scorer, most assists, but I don't know if he'll hit the numbers he did last year. And Nkunku has to have a big year. Jackson has to develop really well. Neto has to stay healthy. And Enzo has to be able to solve, or Enzo Maresca has to be able to solve this Enzo Fernandez-Caicedo dilemma. Can they play together? And if so, how do you get the best out of them? And again, I have to be honest, I haven't watched Enzo Maresca's Chelsea week in, week out. I've seen the results. They don't bode well, but that's not a great way of analyzing a team. I do think, though, Chelsea as a squad, like I said about Liverpool, haven't really changed much from last season. The thing that has changed is the manager. So we're asking Enzo Maresca to be the difference between Chelsea last season and this season. Can he bridge the gap in points by tactically improving them? I think I got them at 6th. I think I got them at 6th, man. I think I have Chelsea at 6th. Yeah, I got Chelsea at 6th for now. I think 6th. I think anywhere between 5th and 7th. I don't think they're going to make the top 4 this year. I think 5th and 7th. Wolves, I have here. I have here for Wolves. Let's see how they spend the Pedro Neto money. Wolves were a good team last year, man. Honestly, Gary O'Neill did a really good job with them. I think they were really unlucky at times. Like, I think personally, right? And I have no bias here because I'm not a Wolves fan. But I think if any team can have a claim to saying they were done dirty the most by VAR, I think it was Wolves. I think Wolves were denied about 10 points from VAR decisions. It was crazy. They played good football. They were safe around like halfway through the year, which I think a lot of people had Wolves really being a relegation dogfight, which for the most part, they never even entered. They kind of went on holiday the last few weeks of the season, finished like lower to mid-table. But I think they're a team that for me under Gary O'Neill are safe. Even Pedro Neto, right? He was their best player. But he misses half the season. So I don't think losing him is the biggest deal, right? Like they missed him half the season last year. He played 20 games. Mateus Cunha's fitness is going to be a whole lot more important. I remember the big guy they signed last year got injured really, really quickly. And that was obviously a big blow for them. But I expect Wolves to be safe this year. I expect them to improve again, be a good watch, be defensively solid, beat a few of the big teams, lose to a few of the small teams, and finish around mid-table. I think that's fair for Wolves. They did lose Kilman, which is a big blow. But I think they'll be okay. I think Wolves around 13th to 17th. Let's look at one of these relegated teams. Who do I think is going to get relegated this year, chat? I think Everton. And look, every year I say Everton. I said it last year. I said it the year before. And I have to give massive credit to Sean Dyche because for the most part, he steers them clear every single time. When it comes to relegation, Sean Dyche is almost foolproof. But I don't know, chat. I'm hearing about more potential deductions. I think the promoted teams that came up this year are a whole lot better than the ones that got relegated last year, which helped Everton massively. Even though Everton last season, even with the points deductions that they got throughout the season, they were pretty comfortable most of the year. And Everton defensively last season were brilliant. Their XG conceded was very, very low. Goal scoring wise, it was an issue for them. Massive issue. But defensively, Everton were really solid. But I'm just thinking, like, eventually luck's going to run out, right? Eventually luck is going to run out. I'm going to put them there for now. And I'm going to put this team as well with them. I am a little fearful for Leicester, chat. I am a little fearful for them. They've lost Dewsbury Hall, who for me was arguably their best player. They've lost Enzo Maresca, who completely transformed that football team in the way he had them playing. Steve Cooper, I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of. And I question, too, where are the goals coming from up front? Vardy is older, and this is his last season. Patson Daka was often not counted on. Iheanacho is gone. Who is the guy up front for Leicester? In midfield, I do think that they need a guy that can kind of like be the difference, not the difference maker, right? But somebody that can kind of make things happen. Like Fabio Carvalho, for me, would have been a really interesting signing for Leicester if they could have gotten it done. Obviously, they missed out on that one, but I think it would have really improved them. I do expect Leicester to be hit with a points deduction at some point this season. It's been rumored since almost last year. I think they go down, man. And I really like Leicester. Leicester were always my second team in the Premier League. I'm biased because Mahrez was my favorite player. And even after he left, I always had a soft spot for Leicester. But this isn't the same team that I really loved a few years ago. I think Leicester kind of go down this year, man. I think Leicester go down. They did sign Buonanotte. Buonanotte is kind of the mold of player I'm talking about. You are right, chat. But is Buonanotte good enough to keep Leicester up? Aye, Loch, I forgot that you guys signed Ndiaye. I did forget you guys signed Ndiaye. That's a big signing. That's a great signing. Ndiaye is a very good player from Marseille. Ooh, that changes things. And they signed O'Brien as well, too, from Lyon. That's a good show. I'm completely forgetting And Leicester are probably signing Zaha. Ooh, chat, I'm forgetting the signings that these teams are making. I think Leicester are going down, though. I have to be honest with you, chat. I think Leicester are going down. I don't think Onana is as big a loss for Everton as people are thinking. I think Onana is a great player, but I don't think Onana was that crucial to Everton. I am going Southampton down.
Stay connected this new term.
They're exciting, but I actually think Southampton, even getting promoted in the first place, was a bit fortunate. I think Leeds were the better team. Now, that doesn't always translate to relegation the first go around. In fact, you often see the team that gets promoted as champions of the championship automatically go down, and it's always almost the team that goes up to the playoff that bodes the best in the Premier League in their first season. But I do think Southampton, it's a bit too much for them. I think Southampton's a bit too much. You're relying on Adam Armstrong to keep up Southampton. Obviously, Che Adams is gone. He went to Torino. And I don't know. Adam Armstrong is one of those guys that has always done really well in the championship, but in the Premier League has never really impressed me as a Premier League level striker. I think I got Southampton going down. I'm seeing a lot of people saying Ipswich are going down. I don't know, chat. Call me crazy. Yeah, Southampton signed Ben Brereton Diaz. That's a good pickup. I can see Ipswich staying up, bro. I just have a feeling Ipswich are going to stay up. I have a feeling. I don't know what it is, right? It's kind of like my Luton feeling, which obviously didn't stay up, but they were the best out of the championship teams. You're doing what you did with Luton last year, and it almost worked. It almost worked. Southampton, one thing I'll give Southampton a lot of credit for, chat, is that they haven't made the same mistakes that Burnley did last year. So Burnley were really good in the championship, but what they did is they managed to permanently bring in the players that they had on loan the year previously. Like Burnley last year, if you remember, they had Maatsen, they had Nathan Tella. They didn't manage to keep either of those two, and they were big losses because those two were crucial for them in the championship. Southampton have managed to keep, what's his name? Harris Bellwood, and the other guy as well too. What's his name? Damn, I can't remember. I swear they had another guy. To be fair, they brought Lallana. They have obviously Ben Brereton Diaz, Flynn Downs from West Ham. It isn't a bad team. It isn't a bad team whatsoever. I don't know, chat. It's a difficult one for promoted teams, for relegated teams this year. I'm going to keep it like this for now. I'm going to come back to this. Ipswich, I'm telling you, I have a feeling about them. I have a feeling about Ipswich this year. I think they're going to impress. Kieran McKenna. I think he's got Ipswich this year. That's my hot take this year. Ipswich stay up. Barely, but I think they stay up. Forest, though. See, Forest is that team, again, barely stayed up last year, and I think Forest got lucky, to be honest, that Luton just ran out of steam towards the end. If I'm going to put a team in the bottom three, it might be Forest. It just depends out of these teams who stays up. And I'm tempted to say Everton. Let's continue. Bournemouth. Obviously, Iraola took the league by storm last year. He was brilliant for Bournemouth. Came in. The first 2 games, it looked really spooky. I think Bournemouth didn't win a game for their first 8. But once Iraola got his fingerprints on this team, they never looked back. I think from November onwards, they were in the top 6 based on form. The big loss is obviously Solanke. They signed the center back from Juve, or is it Juve or Roma? Hjomland. Hodgson. They signed him. He's a huge talent. He's a massive talent. They made the signing of Enes Unal official. They brought in Luis Sinisterra official. But the issue is selling Dominic Solanke. Obviously, they've gone and brought back £65 million to spend. How do they spend that? Where's the replacement for Solanke? Because that's a lot of goals you're asking Bournemouth to replace. That's a lot of goals, man. They are signing Araujo. I saw that as well, too, from Barca, the Mexican kid. But that's a lot of signings that's a lot of goals to replace, chat. They need to make a splash in the window now. But I still think Bournemouth have enough, man. I'm a fan of Bournemouth's team, honestly. I think they got a lot of talent all over the pitch. I think Iraola has proven that he's a very, very adept manager. I think I got them 7th to 12. 7th to 12, but towards the bottom, I think, of 7th. Maybe... I have them here for now, depending on how they replace Solanke. Maybe they leapfrog both these teams. Maybe. Brentford, they just announced, what's his name? Fabio Carvalho. Outside of that, I don't think they've done much business, right? They managed to keep Ivan Toney for now. And Mbuemo's still at the club. I got Brentford for now between 13th and 17th, which is typically where they finish. I can't lie. That's where they've been for most of their Premier League career. They're in and around mid-table, mid-table to lower mid-table. I think that's typically where you can expect Brentford to finish. So I got Brentford there. We've left a lot of the big teams, chat. we have left a lot of the big teams. And one of them that we have to talk about this year is West Ham. There's a lot of change that's happened at West Ham this summer, right? David Moyes finally departed the club after so many years in charge, had some really big moments. I think last year finally hit a ceiling. They chose to move on. And in his place is Lopetegui. Now, Lopetegui is always an interesting manager for me because he's had tremendous success for some clubs. And then for other clubs, he's massively struggled. Real Madrid was clearly a step too high for him. Sevilla wasn't great with them either the second go around. It was Sevilla, right? Who I think he got fired when he was around like bottom of the league, you know? Because I think he won the Europa League with them the first time, but I think the second time around, it didn't end up too well for them. No, sorry. It was Porto that he did really well with, excuse me. Sevilla, I swear, didn't he win the Europa League with Sevilla? Yeah, he won the Europa League against Inter. But didn't he get fired towards the end of the second season? Yeah, following 5 losses in 8 matches. I knew it. Okay. So he ended up getting fired, went to Wolves, kept them up for the most part, right? Because at one point, Wolves, under, who was it? The Portuguese guy, were heading straight down. And he came in and completely changed up their season. Left towards the end of the year, and now he's in at West Ham. I think Lopetegui is always a mixed bag, right? Because I think he's a good manager, but I do worry, like, what's his ceiling as a manager? And that's probably the case with West Ham as well, too. You know, they're a good team. You know, they have good players, but what's their ceiling? And I think under David Moyes, they were always comfortable because they had a clear ceiling. They were never going to go down under David Moyes, which before him was kind of concerned at times. But you also knew under David Moyes, you knew the style you were going to play, and you knew you were probably capped maximum 6th. Towards the end, you were even falling 8th, 9th, 10th. And you look at the squad that West Ham had and the team that they're building, it's a very, very good team. It's a very, very good team. You look at that midfield, right? They have added quality in there. Paqueta, for me, chat, is on his day as good as any attacking midfielder in this league, not named De Bruyne. I think he's that level. I think Paqueta is incredible. Alvarez is a top defensive midfielder. And they've even added depth in that position too with Guido Rodriguez, another really, really able defensive midfielder. Up front, they have one of the most exciting attacks in the league. Jared Bowen is almost guaranteed 15 goals, 12 to 15 goals in his sleep. Kudus on the left is sensational and would probably make it at every single Big Six team. Every single one of them. He's that good. I swear I'm missing another one in that front three. Somerville as well too. Just recently signed from Leeds. Player of the year in the championship. Can he make that step into the Premier League? He looked decent in that year in the Premier League and for Leeds. But can he make that step up to West Ham? They've just signed Nicholas Füllkrug, who led the line for Champions League finalist Borussia Dortmund, was the ultimate X factor off the bench for Germany at the Euros. Can he finally break that striker curse for West Ham that they've had for so many years? West Ham have brought in so many center forwards, and almost none of them have been able to displace Mikel Antonio. Can Füllkrug be the first one? And then defensively as well too, right? They've brought in Max Kilman from Wolves, who I've always thought is one of the more underrated center backs in the league. They're bringing in Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back. They already have some good center backs in the likes of Aguerd. I just look at West Ham's team, right? In terms of individual quality, it's a pretty damn good team. James Ward-Prowse, I didn't even mention him. Souček, a really good player to kind of bring on, or in certain circumstances, just bully defenders. West Ham have a good squad. Did they sign Todibo? Is that confirmed? Bro, this team is sick. It's a sick team. Honestly, West Ham have a sick team. This is my only worry with West Ham. Is it too much change too quickly? Hear me out here, because some people might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about? You just named this amazing team, these amazing transfers. Is it too much too quickly? I've seen teams bring in all these players with a new manager, and it takes them a while to gel, and sometimes it never does. Or the board runs out of patience before it even gets the chance to gel. I do worry sometimes. Like, we've seen at times, chat, with some teams, we all say they won the transfer window. That's what we're saying about West Ham at the moment. They won the transfer window. And then the season starts, and they completely flattered to deceive. I'm not saying that's going to happen with West Ham, but that is an issue. Like, that's a slight worry for me. That's a slight worry for me. I've been watching the Premier League for a long time, since 2006. I've watched a lot of teams. I've watched a lot of patterns kind of end up happening. I remember Chelsea when they signed Havertz and Ziyech and Thiago Silva and Werner. I know they won the Champions League that year, but everyone was saying, oh, they won the transfer window. They struggled for a large part of that season. That's my one worry for them. And I think for that reason, I probably still have them around here, chat. I think I still have them around here, which is crazy. Like, you look at the quality of the Premier League this year, chat. West Ham and Newcastle could potentially miss Europe. You look at their teams. Those are top teams, bro. They're very, very, very good squads. And it's why with Chelsea, I'm keeping them there for now. I'm not 100% sure, chat. I'm not 100% sure. I got to go back to them. Let's talk about Forest before we get to like these big 5 teams. Let me see Forest's transfer activity this window. They've signed Elliot Anderson from Newcastle. Good player. Big fan of Elliot Anderson. Milinkovic from Fiorentina. Good pickup. And then a few guys here and there. It's okay. It's okay. Who did they lose out on? Their backup goalkeeper went to Newcastle. Niakate went to Lyon. Mangala left for Lyon. Remo Freuler went to Bologna. It's a lot of departures, I can't lie. They let a few guys go as well too. They massively shaved down their club, for sure. I don't know with Forest though, chat. Have they really done a lot? Have they done enough? First season, like full season for Nuno Espirito Santo. Obviously, he came in midway last year, changed it for them. I'm not too sold by Forest, chat. I think they're going down this year. But the question is, at the expense of who? Leicester, Everton, or Southampton? I think I'm going with Everton. I actually forgot about the signing of Ndiaye and of O'Brien. I think those are very, very good signings. I do really rate those signings. And I think under Sean Dyche, they just have enough. They just about have enough. So I'm going to go Leicester, Forest, and Southampton this year. I said it. It's predictions, right? I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, so be it. I don't mean to offend any team that goes down. You shouldn't take any offense to any prediction I do. It's just a prediction. It's just a thought. None of it could end up. I could go 0 for 20. I could go 20 for 20. It's just a prediction. I'm going Leicester, Forest, Southampton as my 3 teams relegated. Everton just about missed it again. And I'll even put it Ipswich below them. There you go. Now, United, Spurs, City, Villa, Arsenal. I've left the big teams to last. Where should we start, chat? I'm going to start with Spurs. Where am I putting Spurs, chat? I think I'm putting Spurs in top 4. Call me crazy. I'm a big Ange Postecoglou fan. Massive, massive fan. I love the way he carries himself. I love the way he speaks in interviews. I like his leadership. I like the way he's kind of got this Spurs group together, unified. I love the way his teams play football. Fearless, brave, attacking, direct. I love a lot about Ange, man. I have a question mark about Ange, and it's his defensive organization, specifically on set pieces. I remember SDS last year, they got cooked for a take, right? Basically saying Spurs' back 4 is better than Arsenal's back 4. And that take aged like cheese, bro. Molded, because obviously Arsenal have the best defense probably on the planet at the moment, and Spurs defensively leak goals like crazy. But here's the thing, right? The reason I never got involved in that conversation is because there's a difference between defense as a unit and defense as individuals. I think when you look at as individuals, Spurs have excellent defensive individuals. I think Ugarte is a top left back. I think Pedro Porro is a very good right back. And I think Van de Ven and Romero are very good center backs. Spurs have 4 good defenders. Like, for Spurs to improve defensively, it'll be very difficult for them to improve those individuals. Right or wrong, chat? I think it would be very difficult for Spurs to... Not Ugarte, excuse me. Udogie. Udogie is a very good left back. Pedro Porro is a very good right back. Romero and Van de Ven, I think, are very good center backs. As individuals, they are very good defensive individuals. I think Spurs would have a hard time replacing each one of them individually and finding an upgrade. Like, you'd have to break the bank, in my opinion, to find a much better left back than Udogie, a much better right back than Porro, and much better center backs than Romero and Van de Ven. I think both of them, all 4 of them are very good. But as a unit, last year they were a mess. Honestly, Spurs, some of the goals they conceded were kamikaze. They were catastrophic. Honestly, horror. I don't blame it all on them. Obviously, as individuals, they have to do better. But as a unit, which for me is more so on the structure and the tactics of the team, they needed to be a lot better, specifically on set pieces. So I think Spurs have, and also let's not lie, right? It has a lot to do with what's in front of them in Basuma and Sarr. Those guys have to do a lot better as well too. But I think in general, the shape of Spurs, going forward, they're exciting. They create chances. But defensively, they leave a lot to ask for. And just like I talked about Liverpool, just like I talked about Chelsea, and just like I'll talk about United as well too, there aren't 4 defensive signings that Spurs will make this window that will improve their individuals in their back 4. It's up to Ange to increase the tactical level of the team and improve them, coaching for Spurs to become a better team. It's not about individuals for them. It's about tactically. Can they become better defensively? That's on you, Ange. As much as I like you, that's on you. But you look at the other signings that they've made. Solanke up front. Like I said, Spurs created chances last year for fun. But unless Son was in one of those crazy veins of form, goal-scoring wise, that we know that he can get on, Spurs struggled to consistently finish and punish teams with the chances that they created. In Solanke, they have a goal scorer, a guy who put up crazy numbers last year, but also somebody who's very adept with the ball at his feet. Hold up play, brilliant. Running the channel is very good. Solanke is a modern day number 9. He can do a bit of everything. I think it's a very, very good signing. You look at the youngsters that they brought in as well too. Archie Gray, somebody that I think a lot of teams had high on their radars. Very impressive youngster, man. Very, very good player. Big kid, talented, technical, intelligent. Is Bergvall, is that a guy that they brought in last year? Or this year, excuse me. Lucas Bergvall. No, sorry. Okay, so they agreed the deal in February, but he's officially part of their team now. Another guy, in my opinion, that improves the talent, the technical and physical level of the squad. Now, I still think they probably need another winger. I look at their forward options. Brennan Johnson is okay. Richarlison is okay. Kulusevski is okay. They're okay players. They can give you big moments, But relying on them throughout a whole season, I have my question marks. I think they need another big forward. But the rest of the team, I think Spurs just missed out last season. I think last year, the way they kind of capitulated towards the end of the season, I think they've rectified a lot of those issues they had last year. They'll have Bentancur as well, too, for the whole of the season, which I think they missed him out in numerous parts of last year. I see Spurs breaking the top 4 this year. It's going to be tough. For me, it's between them and another team. But I fancy them, man. I think Spurs this year have enough that they can make the Champions League. And I think especially the way they play, it'll be warranted. Which leaves us with a team that I think just about misses out. That's Man United. I have Man United finishing 5th. A few weeks ago, I had them finishing 4th. On further thought, I think they miss out. I think Man United finishes 5th this year. They've bought well. Lenny Yoro, great player for the future. Should be good now as well, too. De Ligt is an upgrade on what they had. Mazraoui is great depth. Xerxes is good backup or potentially even a starter up front. But again, the biggest difference for United this year will either be how Erik ten Hag elevates the level of the squad tactically, or he doesn't. That is what United's season depends on. The question is, do they have enough individual X factor like they've had in the last few seasons that kind of sees them through games? Like even last year, for example, I'm of the belief that United finishing 8th was actually a bit fortunate for them. Because the way they were playing, they were closer to a team placed 11th, 12th, or 13th than they were to a team placed 8th. But when you have guys like Bruno, when you have guys like Rashford, when you have guys like Garnacho, these guys are match winners. They can win you games. But I just think this year, right, the goal is to get back into the top 4. But I don't think they're going to do it. I still think there's question marks about this team that I don't think have been resolved. And I still have question marks over Erik ten Hag. I still do. I'm backing him this year. I hope to be proven wrong. And I hope he can turn it around. I hope injuries were the biggest issue last year. They were an issue, but the way we played football should not have been as bad last year as it was, injuries otherwise. And it's a question mark I still have going through the season. The Community Shield was actually, it didn't make me feel good, but like it was a bit of a relief. Like, okay, it's a bit better than I thought it was. But I still don't think this United team is good enough to make the top 4. I still think they miss out. I don't know if it's 5th, 6th, or 7th. I'll say 5th for now. And we'll see what they do. They definitely need midfielders. If they don't sign midfielders, they're definitely not making top 4. But we'll see how the window finishes off. For now, I got them finishing 5th, bro. 5th or 6th. I agree as well, too, Loch. I think a huge difference will be what kind of Rashford you get, how many games of Lisandro you get, how many games of Luke Shaw you get. Can Onana be better than he was last season? What kind of version of Mason Mount do you get? Because for me, what you get, how good is Casemiro this season? There's a lot of question marks of United. And that's why for me, they're very difficult to predict. If everything I just said works out for the better, then yeah, they can make the top 4. Casemiro at his best is a top defensive midfielder. The issue is at his worst, he's borderline unplayable. Rashford at his best is one of the most feared attackers in the league. The issue is at his worst, he's borderline unplayable. These are the issues. They're tough to predict, man. They're very, very tough to predict. United rarely misses top 4 2 years in a row. In fact, they never do. They never do. I can't remember the last time United missed 2 years in a row of top 4. I guess Van Gaal and Mourinho, those 2 years, but we won the Europa League, so we qualified for Champions League anyways. One more team has to be 7th and 12th. Yeah, no, I definitely know. I'm just debating between Chelsea and Aston Villa. Guys, this is just predictions. People are telling me this team's not finishing. This team's not. It's just predictions. None of us have any idea. This is just a prediction. They might very well not. They might do it. Who knows? It's just a prediction. But we can't say anything with absolute authority here, bro. What has Villa's preseason been? People are saying, notice how everyone overreacts to Chelsea's preseason, but not to Villa's I think I got Villa 7th, bro. I got Villa 7th. You know what? I'm going to stick with that. I might be absolutely wrong here. I think Villa will take a step back from last year. Maybe not as dramatic as Newcastle, but I think people are underestimating as well, too, how difficult it is competing for Champions League when you've never played in that competition before. That's a tough ask. But we'll see with Villa. We'll see. I think United, Chelsea, Villa, Newcastle could all finish between 5th to 8th. Honestly, even Spurs, 4th through 8th is very difficult to predict this season, in my opinion. You could make a case that any of those guys finish above the other. This is just off first thought. I got Spurs 4th, United 5th, Chelsea 6th, Villa 7th, Newcastle 8th. I think I go for that, which leaves us with the top 2. Last season, I predicted Arsenal to win the league. Obviously, that didn't happen. Have Arsenal done enough this season to bridge the gap between them and City? They brought in Calafiori. Mikel Merino didn't. I mean, that's not over the line yet. Mikel Merino is still not an Arsenal player, even though I expect that to happen. Jesus has looked good in preseason, but I'm always cautious to put too much credit onto that. City have signed Savio, but they have to replace Alvarez. but for the most part, it's the same team. Haaland will be fit, you'd think anyways, for the whole season. De Bruyne will be back for more than half a season. Have Arsenal done enough this window to bridge the gap between them and City? And even if they haven't, does it matter? Because I remember Liverpool at one point in 17, 18, was it 18, 19? Neck and neck with City. Lost the league by a point or two. The next season didn't make any signings and stormed to the league. And funnily enough, that's the year City won the Community Shield, I think. I don't know, chat. I don't know. I really don't know. Again, it's a lot of question marks of Arsenal. What version of Martinelli do you get this year? How much can you get from Jesus this year? Is there another forward coming in the window? I think City have got it again, chat. I have to be honest with you here. I think City have it again. I think City got it this year. And don't get it twisted. I would love to be wrong here. I will be sick to my stomach if City wins 5 in a row. That'll be so depressing, chat. But I don't know. Has Arsenal done enough this window to say that they'll surpass City this year? 5 in a row will be sickening, chat. Timber being back. Yeah, that's like a new signing, if you want to call it that. I think City get it done again, bro. I don't think any team, like, honestly, like, chat, if I'm being real here, right? This league, I go into every league, right? Always saying, every season I go into it saying, oh, this could be one of the best Premier Leagues we have in a long time. Like, this team is equipped to do better. This team's loaded up. This team signed some great players. This team's got a top new manager. I could see this being one of the most competitive Premier League seasons in a long time. This is one of the first years, honestly, where I enter a season, chat, and I don't really expect much to be different. Like, I think Arsenal will compete with City. I'm not trying to say Arsenal are going to fall off, but I don't think Arsenal look that much different than they did last year. I don't think City looked that much different than they did last year. Chelsea, with a new coach, are different, but it's the same squad. United, it's the same coach with slightly different squad. Like, a lot of these teams haven't really changed much. I don't expect this season to be that much different than last season. Maybe I'm being harsh on Villa, but I think West Ham fans would say I'm being harsh on them. I think Newcastle fans would say I'm being harsh on them. And I think Villa fans say I'm being harsh on them. I think all three of them would say, oh, you're disrespecting us. So if I put United at 8th, their fans will say I'm disrespecting them. If I put Chelsea at 8th, their fans will say I'm disrespecting them. Like, hey, bro, I can't do it all. I can't put everyone in the top 4. Villa preseason. What's Villa's preseason been saying? It ain't been great either, chat. It ain't been great either. Am I being harsh on Chelsea? I don't think I am, tall as you. I think you're a Chelsea fan, so you think so. But I don't think Chelsea have really shown me anything to suggest they're going to take this massive leap this year, bro. Again, if you guys sign like an Osimhen level player, for me, that changes everything. That changes everything. But sue me for not being completely sold on Nico Jackson, on Mudryk, on Pedro Neto in his fitness. Sue me for not being Madueke. Sue me for not being 100% sold on those guys. I think I have good reason not to be sold on them. Don't you think City's players practically having no preseason will affect their start? I don't think so. I think Pep will be able to manage it. I think for me, City, I know who they are. Like, City have nothing to prove to anybody. It's Arsenal and the rest of the league that has something to prove here. Have they done enough to upset City? City are the champions, bro. Hell, they're the 4-time champions. They don't have to prove anyone to anything. Like, they don't have to prove anything to anybody. They are who they are. I feel pretty happy. Like, these 3, I'm pretty confident. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic about Ipswich. Everton, I think, will survive. I think Brentford, Brighton, and Wolves, that's mid-table heritage. Same with Bournemouth, Fulham, and Palace. That's mid-table heritage. West Ham, like I said, I've seen West Ham have crazy signing summers before when they would sign Yarmolenko and they'd go, like, they go make big signings. It doesn't always pan out. I know it's a different manager. I know it's a different era, but we'll see. To be honest, chat, I think if I'm being disrespectful to anybody, it's Newcastle. Because I think we're forgetting how much everyone rated Newcastle last season before Champions League hit them, before the Tonali suspension hurt them, before the injuries hurt them. I think we're being a little harsh. But to be fair, they haven't done much, right? They're really hoping, Newcastle, that the injuries that come back and another year of Hall and Livramento kind of getting better and better and keeping Gordon, I think that's what they're really hoping for. But nah, I don't think Newcastle will make top 4. I know I'm standing on business with United. 5th is not a great season, chat. I'll be real. United finishing 5th or 6th, it doesn't make a difference to me, right? I'm not the one who has to go bald if United finishes below Chelsea. For me putting United 5th, Chelsea 6th, you guys are getting all upset about that. What's 5th and 6th? Really? What's 5th and 6th? It's the same shit. One gets Europa League, one gets Conference League. It's the same shit, guys. Let's be real. There's no difference for me if United makes 5th or 6th. Same with Chelsea. 6th is Europa too. Bro, okay, thank you. So anybody who's really getting annoyed at me putting United and Chelsea 5th or 6th or one above the other, what's the difference? Bar Faisal and Liban, who have a bet going on about who finishes above the other, why does it matter who finishes above United or Chelsea if they're both finishing outside the top 4? Why? They're equally mid. I agree. I think all these teams are similar level. United, Chelsea, Villa, Newcastle. I think they're all similar level. I'm sticking with this. Chat. This is my team. This is my table. Again, it's predictions. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I started off the video by giving that disclaimer. I'll end it as well too. If I'm wrong, it is what it is. If I'm right, It is what it is too. It's just predictions, man. It's just predictions. But I think I'm happy with this. I think Palace, Fulham, Bournemouth, Wolves. I'm even happy with the placement, to be honest with you. I'm going with that. What do I think Arsenal need to do to win the league? I think they need to sign a big, not name, but a big profile of attacker. I think you guys are missing a game breaker up front. I don't know who it is, and I'm very aware, chat, it's very difficult to find that kind of player in the market, especially this late. You got to break the bank for that kind of player. But I do think that's what's missing in this Arsenal team.